It was minus 31 degrees in Quebec City on the evening of February 11th, 1967. In spite of the bitter cold, some 5,000 people gathered in front of the Parliament buildings. They had come to take part in a piece of Canadian history. A young Quebec athlete carrying a homemade torch climbed an unsteady ladder and ignited a ceremonial flame. The Canada Winter Games were born. For the organizers, the success of this first venture was crucial. Supporters of amateur sport in Canada had fought for over 40 years to stage these Canadian Olympics, and this was to be a trial run. If Quebec City failed, all their energy and momentum would be lost. But nothing failed. In the magic of that centennial year, the Games were a huge success. With volunteer manpower and limited financial backing, organizers in Quebec City put on a show that secured the future of the Canada Games. In the 18 years since then, the Canada Games have been hosted by almost every province in the country. Every 2 years, alternating between summer and winter, communities like Breton have been given the honor of welcoming athletes, officials, media, and visitors. And for each community, the mood and the spirit have lasted long after the flame was extinguished. This flame is being lit in Saskatoon, site of the second Canada Winter Games in 1971. The torchbearer is Diane Jones, a gold medal winner at the Canada Summer Games 2 years before. Diane went on to become a formidable Olympic pentathlete. Recognize anyone here? That's Bob Gainey in number 14. As a teenager in Saskatoon, Gainey demonstrated his NHL potential. Canada Games competition also launched the careers of Tola Cranston, John Ritchie, Philippe de La Salle, Sharon and Shirley Firth, Brian Orser. For most participants, the Canada Games represents their first major athletic competition. It's here that talent is recognized and developed for future Commonwealth and Olympic Games. It's also here that Canadian coaching and training techniques are assessed. This monitoring is an essential ingredient in the development of amateur sport in Canada. The story of any Canada Games is essentially a story of people.
Welcome to the Canada Winter Games 1983.
The Games are rarely held in a major center, but instead are given to smaller communities like ours in order to develop needed facilities and human resources. What has made the Games memorable for thousands of people is the community spirit generated by organizing an event of this size. At those first Games in Quebec City, weather played havoc with all the carefully laid plans. Temperatures fell to minus 54 degrees. An overnight snowstorm left the city paralyzed and the Games stalled. But Canada Games fever had taken hold and everyone pitched in to help. A French radio station broadcast regular bulletins to the athletes and for the first time in its history, broadcast in English. Community spirit was never more evident than in Saskatoon in 1971. Saskatchewan is noticeably lacking in mountains, but that didn't stop the people of Saskatoon. They built one. For 2 years, thousands of tons of earth were trucked to the site, and gradually Blackstrap Mountain grew out of the prairie. Now that's community spirit. And again in 1975, people made the Canada Games special. Weather prevented a group of athletes from returning to Lethbridge from their venue site on Bow Island. So every farm in the community opened its doors and took the youngsters in for the night. An experience in hospitality they'll never forget. 4 years later, in Brandon, weather was perfect. Organizers even arranged for a total eclipse of the sun during their closing ceremonies. This scientific wonder was a fitting end to 2 weeks of fierce competition. It should be pointed out that the medals are not the only reason for competing in the Canada Games. Here is the Centennial Cup, awarded each Games to the provincial team showing the greatest improvement. Canada Games competition emphasizes participation over winning, cooperation over medals. Look at the faces of these athletes. The joy of friendly competition is reward enough. Of course, there must also be recognition for excellence of performance. The Canada Games flag is the prize won by the province with the highest aggregate point score. In Brandon, the powerful teams of Quebec and Ontario battled for top honor, and the winner was not decided until the last minute of the last basketball game of the competition. In spite of the solar splendor outside, most Brandonites felt that nothing could eclipse the Games, which had focused the attention of the entire country on their community. No matter where the Canada Games are staged, television brings the action to every living room in the nation. With teams of reporters and technicians, the CBC has covered each Canada Games. Their cameras are everywhere, recording the competition, the work, the fun, the enthusiasm. Through television, all Canadians can share the spirit of these games and cheer their athletes on. Here in beautiful Lac-Saint-Jean, television cameras caught the spirit of warm hospitality. 4 tiny and picturesque communities of Jonquière, Chicoutimi, Alma, and L'Abbé pooled their talent and energy to present the 1983 Canada Winter Games. At the opening ceremonies, a 400-voice choir sang the official game song as the flag was raised. And while the flame burned in Saguenay, organizers in Cape Breton were already hard at work preparing to take up the torch and rekindle it for the Canada Games' 20th anniversary. So now it's our turn. Cape Breton has accepted the challenge of hosting the 1987 Canada Winter Games. And the challenge is awesome. 2 weeks of competition, 3,000 athletes, 17 sports, 16 venue sites, 5,000 volunteers, thousands more VIPs, media, mission staff, and spectators, transportation and communication systems, traffic control, security, and entertainment. All this must be organized and ready for February '87. Venue sites will be scattered over much of the island. Cape North will host Nordic skiing. Cape Smoky, the alpine events. Wrestling and table tennis are featured in Sydney Mines. Judo and synchronized swimming in Point Edward. Curling, figure skating, weightlifting, and badminton will be scheduled in Sydney. Speed skating and basketball in New Waterford. Hockey in Glace Bay. Volleyball. Gymnastics. Boxing at the University College of Cape Breton. And for the first time at the Canada Games, Cape Breton will feature the beautiful sport of rhythmic gymnastics. For thousands of people in this community, the Canada Games will be the experience of a lifetime. As in all Canada Games, volunteers will provide the energy that makes an event of this size possible. Volunteers will plan, organize, and execute the events. Volunteers will paint, drive, usher, sew, medicate, officiate, and decorate. Volunteers will dance and sing and march, cook, guard, report, and build. And most of all, they'll have fun, because that's what it means to be involved in the Canada Games. Time and time again, communities like ours across Canada have risen to the challenge, and in doing so, they've found a new spirit of involvement, new energy, new commitment, new pride. Cape Breton can do it too. Cape Breton will do it, with people working together to make ours the best Canada Games ever. This is our challenge, the challenge to excel.
Look out, world. Look out,